say bonjour. And you can say hola. You can say shalom. You can say privyet. And you can say konnichiwa. Excellent, thank you. Ready? I am you and you are me and all of us are we. Everybody all together. Everybody all together. One big family. I am you, you are me. I am you and you are me and all of us are we. Working towards a better world. Working towards the best that it can be. The best that it can be. The best that it can be. The best that it can be.
The world in which we live today is a very different place to the one in which most of us grew up in. As educators, we are feeling these changes all the time. We know that teaching has changed. We know that technology has changed. We know that our kids have changed. And yet the organisations that we created for them to learn in are by and large decades, and in many cases several decades old. We also know that what it means to be Jewish in today's world is also changing. At a point in time where such fundamental changes are taking place, we have no choice but to innovate and adapt accordingly. Whereas once Jewish learning focused on the transmission of knowledge from a learned individual or a sacred curriculum, now the focus must be on the whole person. Whole person learning can't be achieved by only providing knowledge. Just knowing facts or having good experiences is not enough. We need to reach the mind, the heart, the soul, and the individual's very sense of being. In other words, a person's knowing, doing, believing, and belonging. Meet Levi. Educators use him to design learning that addresses the whole of the person. I often used to think about Jewish education as being about how I could make someone into a, in quotation marks, a better Jew. And I realised over time that it's not about making someone only a better Jew, that if we really believe in what we're doing, that we really have the ability to make these people into better human beings. And that's the transformation that I think we're all in the business of actually being involved with, that we really believe that we can transform the lives of individual human beings. And on top of that, we believe that Jewish context, the Jewish values, the Jewish ethics, the Jewish way of life is actually a good vehicle to enable that to take place. And therefore, it's not just the Jewish self that we're really interested in. We're really looking at the whole human being, the whole individual, and their whole development and growth. So what we know about classrooms is that they're really good for certain things, but it's not just a matter of transmitting knowledge that we're really engaged in. So if we want to try and engage Jewish learners, Jewish youth in the full spectrum of what it means to be Jewish today, then we need to take them outside of the regular traditional classroom model and expose them to a whole lot of different types of learning that make more meaning and have more relevance to where they're at.
I think that a multi-dimensional approach to understanding the goals of Jewish education is very similar to understanding what Jewish identity is about overall, which does have to do with knowing, doing, believing, and belonging. And I think one of the challenges of our language in general is that language shapes our beliefs and our images and our expectations. And I wonder about this language of Jewish education. And it was always interesting to me that we've chosen the term education, because education often strikes up an image of a classroom, a row of desks, a teacher giving information with a goal of mostly the knowing part, because by and large, that's the way schools have been framed. And the concern about applying the term education to Jewish education is that if one is stuck with that narrow conceptualization of what education is, then it's hard to think about meeting the broad goals that Jewish educators really want. And if we get stuck on the education must happen in something called schools, or even something called educational settings, to use a less restrictive term, then I think we're limiting ourselves.
The research tells us that when individuals experience something for themselves and then reflect upon that experience, that is where the most transformative learning actually takes place.
It's fun. We're helping people. They liked it. It's really showed me that it's good to be a good citizen, even if you don't get something back from it.
I wouldn't want people just learning about Shabbat for the same reason that a basketball coach wouldn't want basketball players just learning about basketball. And that's because the outcome I would want to see goes well beyond taking a quiz about what Shabbat is all about. And it speaks to the holistic elements of identity that are emotional, that are affiliative, that are practice-based, and you don't grow in those areas by learning about them. You grow in those areas by experiencing them and reflecting on them.
My research has shown that being immersed in things is an important opportunity, but it's not the only process you want to have happen. I think when people are learning and this isn't what they've been raised with, then giving people a chance to reflect and debrief is also important. Let them have a little space. When do they feel comfortable or uncomfortable, or what didn't they know? What was confusing? I think letting that be a legitimate set of questions could also be a useful tool. It's a separate process from immersion. I keep thinking about Birthright, or these trips to Israel. You go to Israel, you climb Masada, you do this, you do all these things. Do you have time to think about it, to unpack it, to think about what you think, not about what the ideology is? I think that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, that we need to give people space and give them sort of a permission to have their own feelings, and they may not go the way you want them to go, and it's their life.
They really loved the smallest things we did. It felt great to see them smile and everything.
What issues do you think were being addressed in the work of Homes for the Homeless?
Well, earlier we were talking about different issues, and I think the main issue might be economic issues because they don't have a house.
Mitzvah Korah has made me think how thankful I should be for everything that I have. So, because not many people have more than what I have, so I'm very fortunate for that. And when I'm talking to my friends, I want them to be just as grateful as I am.
As kids develop, it's important for us to recognize that a natural part of adolescence is them developing their own agency to make their own decisions. And this is combined with the fact that their peer group often becomes as influential and sometimes more influential than their parents. But giving them that agency also means that we need to be able to give them a whole range of choices for which they can actually make that individualized decision as to which path they want to follow.
The idea that a one-size-fits-all approach to any Jewish growth is not going to work. And the empowerment of people to be able to grow in ways that's meaningful in a variety of ways that are meaningful for them, in authentic and supported and respected ways, is crucial.
My major in high school is actually history, and I'm very interested in Jewish history and Jewish interaction with the people that they were around and how that affected world history. So why don't I teach the younger kids, especially the kids of my brother's age, about this?
If we're building on the premise that people are meaning-seeking individuals, then an educator might want to relate to the questions that the learner has. And from those questions, connect the resources of Judaism.
Things that we learn in Kesher Kef do come up in my life. For example, we did a lesson on perseverance, and we actually used examples from our real life. Like, people wanted to be on the NFL, the MLB, and I wanted to be on Broadway. We talked about how perseverance means that you have a goal and you stick to it until you do it.
I'm really encouraging educators to attend to the individual because it makes the person also just feel appreciated and heard. And all of us do better when we feel we're taken in. I mean, not, taken in a good way, that we're connecting, that somebody's getting us, and that they care about us.
There's no doubt in my mind that as a child is developing, the most important influence in their life is the family unit. Interestingly enough, in the Jewish community, it's not just restricted to the parents, but also the grandparents play a really significant role in the lives of many Jewish young people today.
There are a lot of reasons why the family really is a central dimension of Jewish development, and one that we can't ignore. There is a recurring data point in all kinds of studies of youth and adolescence that when I talk to parents, I reassure them about this, that as much as we think our kids want to turn from our values and rebel, and again, parents come out as the influence on youth's values and attitudes in the religious sphere and beyond. So there's always this kind of pop view of it is, well, the kids turn against their parents and go on their own way. The data really show that the parents are the ones who are enormously influential in religious attitudes and other attitudes.
Personally, I love the fact that my kids, actually I'm not just dropping them off and telling them to go and do their thing. I'm actually participating with them. They see me go to a class, they see me doing Bible study, and they see that it's something that's important to me as well. So I'm not just telling them what to do, I'm leading them by example, which is something I think is important.
From my research, and certainly I think it's not only in my research but others as well, a very powerful element is the sort of well-being of the family, the emotional climate in the family, and the emotional connections between parents with each other and between kids and parents. And it works basically like this. If there's disruption between the kid and the parent, no matter how much the parent is deeply Jewish, it may become disrupted. If the parents feel comfortable with their Jewishness and they get on with their kids, that's going to translate. It's going to transfer.
At the end of the day, we know that most children who enjoy learning, who enjoy becoming part of the whole Jewish educational experience, do so primarily because of the relationships which they develop.
Best vegetable interpretation.
And broccoli.
If there were one element that I would really stress, I think it would be relationships. I think that the idea of Jewish identity and the idea of Jewish growth becomes a very personal process that plays out with very communal elements. So it's very interesting. We talk about Jewish identity as a journey, but at the same time, we talk about Jewish communal membership and balancing the individual and the individual identity and the communal connection becomes the true challenge, but also where you're going to get a huge amount of leverage. And what that means is that this individual journeying and identity development needs to take place, or would ideally take place, in relationship, in dialogue. We learn interpersonally. We grow from the stories we tell. We grow from the stories we hear. And for us to be able to share those stories in a safe and meaningful way would gain us a lot of ground.
When you have learners who are not native speakers and you put them in a situation where everybody speaks the language the child doesn't speak, they quickly learn it. And it's no different from that, the fact that there would be sort of a context that has a steady message, that if you use language as the analogy, that everybody is speaking this language and you're gonna learn the terms. You're gonna sort of become steadily more fluent as you hang out there. That's a kind of enculturation, and it includes shared norms and ways of doing things, and that it becomes natural and that you kind of just do it.
I think one take-home message from this is the importance of getting to know folks in a very deep and meaningful way, and to have those relationships extend over time and across settings. It could really be anyone within the synagogue context, but again, someone who is a good listener, someone who's caring, someone who has continuity and the ability to have reflective conversations with the youth in the synagogue.
Synagogues can be big places, and people need to be able to find a spot that is perfect for them as individuals. That's true about the world. You know, we hope that people will feel cared for and feel appreciated as individuals, and we hope that people will find their individuality in something that is a lot bigger than themselves. That's a really good model, I think, for Jewish community.
What is the role of the educator or the rabbi, or if people are on journeys and there's this sense that they're constructing their own lives, or they're navigating a life that may not be, it's very individualized. And I would say that instead of thinking about giving them something, I think it's more important to think about guide or accompanying or witnessing or helping them on to the next stage, or being a resource. All those things are words that convey a different thing than telling, or the authority talking down. I think it's a more collaborative idea, and it allows for more exchange. And when you think about what is involved in a relationship, it is an exchange. So we want Judaism and Jews to be sort of in this interchange where they're comparing notes across maybe a divide, but maybe that's how the divide gets bridged.
I also think that it's really important for us to be role models and to model what it is that we want to see our students be doing. I think that it's also important for us to show our difficulties with texts, with politics, whatever it is. It's important to bring in the real world into the classroom. I think we're also supposed to be morim, moreh, morah derech. We're leaders of the path. We're guiders. We're not necessarily the teacher that stands in front of the classroom, but we are there to help them and help move them along.
The one thing that I would change would be to try and move the curriculum or the knowledge base from being the most important thing that needs to be transmitted to the child. In today's world, knowledge is really important, but the crucial thing about it is that it's not the ability to actually gain knowledge which is important, it's the ability to know how to access that knowledge. And therefore, our real role as educators is not to give them knowledge as if they're passive, empty vessels that know nothing, but really to give them the empowerment, the experiences, so they can go and pursue that knowledge for themselves.
Since we've been doing this LOMED program, our teaching style has changed so much. Everything has become so much more experiential than it ever was before. We're really reaching the children in many different ways. The whole living, learning, doing, knowing has become such a part of even who we are as teachers.
Best idea ever.
Oh,
We're not just educating the children about Judaism. We're creating Jewish lives. We're not just teaching them Torah. We're creating people who live Torah.
Where are we taking our tzedakah boxes? Home. Good, and what are we going to do with it at home? Put money in. Put money and read the stories with Mommy and Daddy, right? Yeah. Good job.
The work ahead for Jewish educators in a world that has dramatically changed is to nurture the whole person. The research tells us clearly that a classroom alone can't do that. Together we are learning how to speak to the questions and needs of the individual, to build relationships and community, to engage the family and support the agency of teens, to create vital lived experience. By pioneering new approaches, we'll create Jewish learning that meaningfully engages today's learners.
I feel like since I've grown that God's been there more for me, because I feel whenever I'm in a situation or I have a problem, whether it's in school or at home, God's always there telling me which way to go. It's like my conscience. He's always there, even if I don't know it.
It feels happy and good. We learn about each other, not only about God, Moshe, and Shemot. We learn about each other.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Was it? Did it sound too canned? Okay.
That's it. That's the core of the movie. That makes me so happy to hear.
So, there we have it.
Good.
Good.
Great.
Enough. Cut. Good. Cut.
I'm
You
just going
forgot
take.
to say action.
Yeah.